The 12,000-year-old dental mystery. All right, let's dive right into this explainer and solve a literal biological medical mystery happening right inside your own head. We spend absolutely billions of dollars and honestly endure years of mild oral torture just assuming human mouths are naturally flawed. But what if that isn't true at all? What if we've had it completely wrong? Let's use the archaeological and scientific records to figure out exactly what happened to the human face. Why exactly are your teeth crowded? Seriously, picture yourself looking in a mirror right now and ask yourself why your teeth are twisted. Why did you need braces? Or why on earth did your wisdom teeth have to be surgically pulled out? Think about your own dental history for a second. Maybe one tooth is slightly overlapping another. Maybe you're even wearing a retainer right now that you keep forgetting to sleep in. We just kind of accept this whole shebang as completely normal, right? We figure it's just a random genetic roll of the dice that our bodies grew teeth that simply do not fit into our own skulls. 60 to 90%. Just consider the sheer massive scale of this problem. A staggering 60 to 90% of people in the developed world have some degree of misaligned or crowded teeth. I mean, to put that into perspective, if 90% of humans were born with a foot that was literally too big for their own ankle, we'd immediately realize something was structurally fundamentally wrong. Yet when it comes to our mouths, we just throw billions of dollars a year at orthodontists and jaw surgery, trying to artificially fix a widespread flaw that actually went wrong somewhere along our evolutionary path. Now contrast our modern, crowded mouths with ancient hunter-gatherers from about 15,000 years ago. If you look at their skulls, their teeth are perfectly straight. I mean, we're talking wide, beautifully even arches. Every single tooth is sitting exactly where it should, with plenty of room in the back for wisdom teeth to just erupt naturally. And here's the absolute kicker. They achieve this without toothbrushes, without floss, fluoride, or braces. Oh, and on top of all that, in a lot of these ancient skulls, cavities are practically non-existent. Zero. A slow-motion collapse? So the crucial takeaway here is that something absolutely dramatic happened between that ancient, perfectly straight smile in the dirt and the modern, crowded mouth you see in your bathroom mirror. It wasn't some overnight mutation. It was actually a slow-motion collapse that we can literally watch happen, generation by generation, right there in the archaeological record. The human mouth fundamentally changed its shape and its health, and researchers have pinpointed exactly when that collapse kicked off. Tracing the clues back 15,000 years ago, we were entirely hunter-gatherers. But then, right around 12,000 years ago, boom, the agricultural revolution hits and changes everything. Fast forward to modern day, and we're living in the era of highly refined sugar and orthodontics. So to really grasp this collapse of the human jaw, we have to look closely at what happened during that massive shift from foraging to farming. See, before farming, early humans ate whatever their wild, untamed environment gave them. We're talking incredibly tough, fibrous wild plants, roots that had to be physically gnawed out of hard dirt, raw nuts, and torn wild game. Turning every meal into a heavy mechanical workout for the jaw wasn't just an option, it was a non-negotiable daily requirement. Chewing was hours of heavy labor. It was basically CrossFit for your face. Literally thousands of hard grinding cycles every single day just to break down food enough so you could safely swallow it. And this stark comparison reveals exactly what shifted. Farming essentially replaced all those thousands of hard grinding chews a day with soft, mashable foods. With the agricultural revolution came grain, stuff like wheats, barley, rice, and corn. Suddenly, we were grinding these into fine flour, boiling them into mushy porridge, or baking soft breads. For the literal first time in human history, a huge chunk of our daily calories required almost zero chewing. You can just mash it a couple times and swallow. And while it turns out your body was paying very close attention to that missing physical labor. Developmental plasticity. To really get why this matters, we have to talk about this concept. A lot of us think our jawbone is totally fixed at birth, like a pre-manufactured piece of plastic, but is actually living, dynamic tissue. It actively grows outward and forward, but only when it's stimulated by mechanical stress during childhood. It's just like how a tennis player's serving arm gets stronger from swinging a heavy racket, or your leg bones get denser when you run. Your jaw develops its proper width and length directly in response to the muscular strain of heavy chewing when you're young. The 2011 Jawbone Study. This isn't just a wild theory, by the way. A really brilliant study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences proved this completely. Researchers compared lower jawbones from populations all over the world, splitting them into hunter-gatherers versus farmers. And the results? Totally undeniable. Across completely unrelated global populations, the farming groups consistently had shorter, narrower jaws. And it wasn't because they had different genetics. It was simply because their childhood diets totally lacked that mechanical chewing resistance needed to signal the jaw to grow to its full potential. The biological mismatch. So what you end up with is a devastating biological mismatch. See, your tooth size is controlled by a really stubborn set of genetic instructions. Your teeth basically never got the memo that human diets went soft. But your jaw size, that's controlled by your chewing environment. So you have the exact same number of large teeth being forced into a shrinking piece of bone with every passing generation. When they inevitably run out of room, they twist, they overlap, and your wisdom teeth, which are the last ones to the party, end up completely trapped and impacted. The microscopic disaster. But here's the thing, a shrinking jawbone is really only half the mystery. The other half is this silent, microscopic disaster happening directly on your tooth enamel. It's a completely invisible crisis that kicked off at the exact same moment our jaws started to shrink. And honestly, it might be even more destructive. The ancient mouth microbiome. Think of your mouth as a bustling ecosystem. For most of human history, that ecosystem of bacteria was diverse, incredibly stable, and completely starved of the sugars and starches that cause all the damage. We host hundreds of bacterial species, and naturally, most of them are totally harmless, or even actively helpful. A tough, wild hunter-gatherer diet simply did not provide the fuel that cavity-causing bacteria absolutely crave. The balance was perfectly, beautifully maintained by a tough, sugar-free environment. The 2013 Ancient Dental Plaque Study. To prove this, researchers did something kind of amazing. They extracted actual DNA from ancient calcified dental plaque, essentially freeze-framing exactly what lived in our ancestors' mouths before farming existed. They analyzed teeth spanning thousands of years, and the results were crystal clear. Hunter-gatherer mouths were healthy and perfectly balanced. But the second farming shows up in the dirt, that biological harmony violently shatters. Here is exactly how that breakdown happens. The introduction of farmed carbohydrates, all those soft breads and porridges, gave a tiny, specific group of aggressive bacteria exactly what they needed. Step 1, they absolutely gorge on soft starches. Step 2, they multiply like crazy and excrete acid as a waste product. And Step 3, that acid sits right on your tooth and literally melts the enamel. An early farmer eating grain multiple times a day was just constantly feeding this highly destructive process. So cavity rates didn't just creep up slowly. They spiked sharply the moment agriculture began. We essentially invented the toothache. And as we hit the industrial age, oh man, it gets so much worse. We introduced ultra-refined white flour and concentrated sugars, accelerating the disaster. We stripped out the fiber entirely, giving the bacteria an absolute all-you-can-eat buffet while demanding practically zero chewing from our shrinking jaws. The hidden airway problem. And a jaw that develops smaller and narrower doesn't just mess up your smile. Researchers have found it can actively restrict the airway right behind your tongue. Think about it. If your jaw doesn't grow forward enough, there is physically less room for your tongue to sit naturally. A lot of scientists now believe this 12,000-year-old shrinking of the human face is a major contributing factor to modern issues like chronic mouth breathing and sleep apnea, stuff that would have been incredibly rare back in the day. Calories and stability in exchange for a jaw that no longer fit its own teeth. It ultimately reveals this profound, delayed trade-off for our entire species. Farming is, without a doubt, one of the greatest survival breakthroughs ever. It gave us the calorie stability we needed to build civilizations, cities, and all our modern technology. But we traded the perfect wide-jawed facial structure of our ancestors to get it. We secured our survival, sure, but we sacrificed our smiles and our natural airways in the process. Will you ever look at your retainer the same way again? So the next time you wince in the dentist chair or pop that annoying plastic retainer into a mouth that suddenly feels just a little too small, consider what you're actually dealing with. You didn't inherit inherently bad genes. Actually, you just inherited a wild, ancient mouth built for a tough world we abandoned 12,000 years ago, and we've been awkwardly trying to force it to fit our soft, modern lives ever since. So, will you ever look at your own smile the same way again? Thanks for hanging out with me on this explainer, and keep questioning the things we just accept as normal.